Good afternoon. We may have some technical problems. Can you hear us? Just a second, testing. Okay. Mä sanon, että mä aloitan sitten vastatus. We will start at exact 1 o'clock, so 2 minutes time. So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first webinar which Innovation Manager is doing around the Eurostars funding. And Innovation Manager is a company who does EU proposals. We have done EU proposals since 2009. This year we have done around 20 proposals with a success rate of 60%. So our presentation will last about 30 minutes, and I will distribute this presentation to all of you. And at the end of the presentation, we will go through your questions and answers. So I will shift to the presentation mode. All right. So the content of this webinar is to go through the Eurostars program, and then we will go through the main statistics of the goals, and then we will go through the main parts of the application process and evaluation criteria. After that, we will go through the practical writing tips. Eurostars funding started since 1985. Hold on, there's some technical problems. Just a second. All right, I will start again. So sorry for the confusion. This is my first webinar, so some technical issues. So Eurostar started at 1985, so it's been running more than 30 years, and the current Eurostars number 2 started since 2014. So Eurostars is a co-funding program of member countries and EU. So it means that EU will fund 25% of the budget in the EU countries, and then the member countries will fund 75%. So there are also members outside EU, South Korea, South Africa, Turkey, Israel, Switzerland, Norway, and Iceland. And those are funding their own parts by themselves. So the Eurostars is a program for mainly SMEs, but depending on the country, large companies, research organizations, and other organizations such associations can participate. The Eurostars is a project for technology development, not research. So it means that the product or service which will be developed under this project will need to be in the market after 2 years of the termination of the project. The total budget has been more than 1 billion since this Eurostars 2, and an annual budget is around 300 million euros. So it has 2 calls annually. The next call is 1st of March 2018, and then there's last call next year is 13th of September 2018. So the program is a bottom-up approach, and it means that any topic is fine. Here are the member countries listed. So the Eurostars program have general rules, and then each country have their own specific rules. So these specific rules you need to go to check from the Eurostars website. But now I'm going to the general requirements for all. So there need to be at least 2 partners in the consortia, and the main applicant need to be R&D intensive SME. So SME means small and medium enterprise, and in practice it means this is a EU-wide criteria. So it's for all the participants, same criteria. Every country has the same. So it means that the SME need to have less than 250 full-time employees. So those are counted by full-time equivalent. So there may be more than 250 employees in the payroll, but when they calculate the full-time, the equivalency need to be less than 250. And other criteria is that the SME turnover cannot be more than 50 million euros. So the other criteria for to be R&D intensive means that at least 10% of the personnel of the SME is dedicated to R&D, research and development. And or R&D costs are at least 10% of the turnover. The third criteria is that one country, so there need to be at least 2 partners from 2 countries. So one country cannot have more than 75% of the budget. And the fourth criteria is that the total budget of the SMEs, so there can be 1 or more SMEs in the project, they need to be at least 50% of the budget, excluding subcontracting. So the personal costs of the SMEs need to be at least 50%. So Eurostars project in practice means that usually there are 3 to 4 partners. Also 2 is enough. There are usually 2 to 3 partners, and also 2 is enough. And project duration, there's no limits for that. Or it cannot be more than 3 years, but in average, it is around 30 months. So the project budget is usually between 1 to 3 million euros, and in average, it's 1.4 million. Theoretically, there's no upper limit or lower limit, but in practice, it's no use to make projects less than 1 million euros. There has been some projects up to 10 million euros, but those need to be very well justified about the costs. The funding is usually around 50% grant for SMEs, but in some countries, the grant can be up to 75%. So this you need to go to check from the Eurostars website. Also, some countries fund large companies, research organizations, and other organizations, and they have their own funding rates and criteria, which can also be seen on the website. Here are some statistics. You can see that Germany is clearly the main country, and then comes, let's say, old EU countries. And there was a question that which countries are good to apply. So here's one answer for the question, but it's not totally clear which is the best here. So I can say that some countries, they have their own budgets, and their budgets run out rather fast. So, example, in Germany, the national budget are usually run out, and it means that if you have a German as a partner, the competition there it's higher than compared to other countries. Here is the amount of accepted projects per call, and you can see it's around 100 projects per call. So around 200 projects will be funded each year. And here is the amount of budget per call, and that is usually around 180, 160 million euros. And this is the most interesting slide, and it shows the success rates of Eurostars per call. And compared to other EU funding, especially SME instrument funding, where the success rate is around 3 to 8%, here in Eurostars, we will have from 25 to even 34%, which is totally different figures than the SME instrument. So this is why many of you should consider Eurostars as a possible funding program. And in terms of participant distribution, the main participants, of course, are SMEs, but as you see, there are also research organizations involved and large organizations. Other organizations usually mean associations. Here is the industrial distribution, and it shows that the life sciences, the light blue, are the main focus areas, and the others are industrial, which means basically all industry except environment and ICT and energy, and then ICT is strongly promoted. Environmental and energy is rather small areas compared to other funding programs. And the application is quite tricky. It's an internet-based form where there's a very defined boxes which you cannot change. But the main parts of the applications is the project pitch, which is a one-pager. Then there's a description of the innovation, description of the impact, which means what's the environmental benefit, what are the economical benefits of the project. And then there's a description of the consortium, project management, and intellectual property rights. Then there's a quite standard EU way of describing the work packages, meaning tasks, milestones, and deliverables, and budget. And then there's a description of the partners. And finally, it's very important there are the attachments, because this form is web-based form and you cannot attach any pictures or tables into the proposal, but you can do those in the attachments. So there's one attachment called free attachments. It's a 10-page attachment where you can put any kind of pictures into it. Here are the questions in the applications. So I'm not going to go those through here, but it's just for you to go through later on by yourself, that you can see what are they asking. So there are two kinds of attachments. It's a financial statements for 2 years of the organization, and then there's an additional free annex. So this is the Eurostars application process. So after you have been submitting your proposal, you have 1 week time to confirm that you are interested about this proposal. So they will send you a questionnaire that every partner need to ask. And after that, it will take about 3 weeks. The Eurostar Secretariat will do eligibility check. So they will check the formal criteria, which I went through earlier. And after that, the proposals will be submitted for expert evaluation, where 3 independent evaluators will go through the proposals for each question and make an independent evaluation. So they are not going to discuss with each other. And at the same time, the national agencies in each country will do a financial viability check. So they will check that the partners have their own financial requirements to fund the project. And after this check and evaluation, there will be another evaluation called independent evaluation panel evaluation. And they will rank again the proposals. And after this ranking, the projects will go to each member country, and they will decide it based on their own criteria and budgets, which projects will be funded. And after this, after 14 weeks, there will be communication and grant preparation. So all the partners need to make a consortium agreement together, and then they need to make a grant agreement between each participation country's agency. And after this, the project can start. So whole this project process can take up to 6 months. So here's same described. And the evaluation criteria has 3 main criteria and 12 sub-criteria. So the main criteria are basic assessments, which means quality of the consortium, added value through cooperation, and clear project management definition, and also means reasonable cost structure. The second main criteria is the market and commercialization, meaning impact. So they need to be reasonable market size, clear access to the market and risk management, and they need to be clear advantage compared to the competing products and services. So usually they are talking about breakthrough innovations or radical innovations. But also you need to have very clear and realistic commercialization plans, so that the evaluator really believes what you are saying about your market entry. And usually the business targets need to be around, let's say, multi-million turnover, from 30 to 50 million turnover. So they clearly need to be a huge impact. Then the third part is the innovation and R&D. So they need to be clear innovativeness, degree of innovation, hopefully new scientific knowledge or any kind of knowledge, and clear technical challenges, which will give you competitive advantage. But also you need to show that you have the technical achievability and risk management done. Here are the specific questions under each main criteria. So I'm not going to go those through, but when you are making your proposal, make sure that you will read all those questions and you have an answer for those. So if you don't have any answers for those questions, the evaluator cannot give you high scores because they cannot make up the answers. So this is for the basic assessment. This is for the market and commercialization, the second main criteria. And these are for the third main criteria, innovation and R&D. So about the scoring, each main criteria will be scored from 1 to 6. And each main criteria need to have at least 4.3 scoring. So after this scoring, they will have this independent evaluator panel in Brussels. So they are going to discuss it. And then the national funding bodies will rank the projects. So now we go to more practical things. So one very important thing for you to know is that the projects are not evaluated by public officers. They are being evaluated by common people, like every one of us could be an evaluator. So they are usually researchers, consultants, also public officers, but they are not doing it by an public service, or they can be basically anybody. So that means in practice that the evaluator are not so deep in the technology or the business as you might be. So it means that you need to write the proposal for the common man, so that everybody basically can understand what you're writing. So another thing is that you need to understand that the evaluator may not be too enthusiastic about your proposal or your technology. They don't get compensated very highly. So they get 225 euros per application, which can be 6,100 pages. So, and they get 7 days time to make the evaluation after they get these proposals. So it means in practice that they usually use 1 to 2 hours to read these 6,100 pages. So be careful that you very clearly highlight what's important in your proposal. So in order to make the reading and understanding of the evaluation as pleasant as possible, you need to make that the evaluator really understands the innovation. So basically, you need to avoid all kind of business jargon, avoid all abbreviations, or if you are making those, make sure that you are describing what it means. Also, the evaluators, they can be from any country. So most probably they are not native English speakers. So avoid difficult English, long sentences with many subordinate clauses. And also, when you need to describe your innovation, your market, your competition very clearly, don't put any non-informative, non-adding value sentences. And try to be as logical, chronologic, and specific as possible. Always the first sentence in each chapter is the most important. So after this first sentence, you will create the whole chapter, and it needs to be very clearly understood chapter. And based on those chapters, you want to make the coherent story. And usually it means that you are describing only one innovation. Very often there are many innovations, many innovative aspects, and you need to decrease the innovativeness in one major parts. So in that wise, you can easily compare the competition, you can easily describe the market issues and the real added value of your project. So it means that usually or very often you need to simplify your innovation, simplify your features. Use clear and consistent terminology. Usually the project, innovation, technology or company has a name, and many times even the name can be the same of all of those. The companies are usually named based on the innovation or vice versa, and the technology is usually named based on the innovation. So if you are mixing all these terms together, the reader has very difficulty in following up what you are meaning. Are you meaning about the project, or company, or the innovation? Also, when you are doing the writing in different parts, remember that you use clear one form throughout the application, passive or active, just as an example. And then about the process, you need to use only one writer. So like a book or novel, there cannot be several writers or authors in a good book. So proposal is like a good novel, easy to read, easy to follow. So if there will be multiple writers, the terminology, all the storyline cannot be consistent. But at the same time, when there will be one writer using his time or her time, 1 to 2 months, he or she usually goes too deep into the text. So he cannot find spelling mistakes, conceptual mistakes, or make sure that the proposal is answering all the questions. So it's very useful to use external proofreader. And the proofreading is done bestly when it's done only once. So also the proofreader gets into the text too deeply. So use proofreaders support very carefully, usually after the proposal is almost done. And when you are writing your proposal, you need to really believe the innovation and the business model. So only when you believe yourself into the case, you can write a good, optimistic story to describe your innovation. And then use as much facts and figures as possible and refer those. So always when there's third parties data or reports are used, it gives more credibility for your proposal. And when you are describing your innovation goodness, don't just say that it's better than others. You need to say how much better it is, like 65% or X amount of something. So you need to be very specific in describing your goodness. And as earlier said, that you double check that you answer all the evaluation questions and reserve enough time. Usually it takes 1 to 2 months for us to make a proposal. So we have done those a lot, and still it takes this amount of time. And I would say the one who never done these applications, it would take a double at least. And remember that you cannot outsource fully the application writing. So the SME company or the university need to be in the supporting role, providing material, checking all the mistakes, and proofreading the proposal. If you doesn't need to have world-class innovation, but you still can win with a dream team or perfect consortium. So it means that the dream team are partners which really give added value to each other, and they are the best ones in their own field. So in order to do this, you need to describe how the partners complement each other, and this can be easily done by describing the value chain of the consortia. So there can be subcontractors, partners who add value by different services or technologies, and there also can be a pilot customer who provide insight about the customer needs, but also helping developing the product. Some keywords which you should remember: that your technology is disruptive, breakthrough, radical. It's going to make a paradigm change. So it's not just improvement of something. But don't use words like rather, perhaps, or conditional words like could, should, or would, or any kind of small or minor words. Here's just one example called Lucia. And it's a project done by us. It's about point of care diagnostic instrument. And the coordinator was Labmaster, a Finnish SME. And there were other Korean partners, Korean SME and Korean hospital. So the content was to develop the technology for the market readiness and commercialize it around Europe and Asia. The budget was 1,800,000 and it lasts 30 months. Some more info you can find from the Eurostars website, and the most important documents are the country criteria, which are shown in the separate website, and then go through the eligibility guidelines for completing the application, and especially guidelines for evaluating the applications. So thank you for listening us, and I will provide this presentation material to all of you, and now we are ready for questions and answers. There's one question about comparing the SME instrument and Eurostars. So the difference is in SME instrument and that in the SME instrument program, there can be only one SME applying it. Whereas in Eurostars, there need to be at least two partners. And another criteria, other difference is that in SME instrument, the funding rate is fixed, 75% of grant. In Eurostars, the funding rate varies in each country from 50 to 75%. Also, the one difference is that evaluation process in Eurostars is much longer. As you noticed, it's around 6 months, where in SME instrument, it's usually around 2 months. Then more questions. Just a second. One question is that how can we join an existing consortium? You can find the existing projects in a Eurostars website, and you can check the members of that consortia, and you can, of course, ask them if you want to join for the next possible proposal. But you cannot join an existing project, but you can find out the members of the existing projects and ask them to make a new consortia, a new project. And then, is it possible to cooperate in any joint project? Yes. So Eurostars is a joint project between at least 2 organizations, where the leader need to be R&D intensive SME. And then, are there differences between the participating countries with regards to practice on SME criteria in terms of contributions from the EU? No. So SME criteria is same for all countries. So pretty much those were the questions. So thank you very much for your time, and we wish you luck in your proposal making.